Welcome back into the North Star Takes podcast. I'm Bailey Paulicki. He's Jacob Liberta. We're a Minnesota sports podcast. So if you're a Minnesota sports fan, please give this video a like and hit that subscribe button. And if you're a Minnesota Wild fan, pay attention and give this video a like, even if it's not the most positive video in the world, because Wild, although they're still hanging in there and still playing well overall, we're going to discuss today just how much they have struggled against probably their two most prominent division rivals, at least in terms of how the standings are shaking out this year, in both the Blues and the Nashville Predators. The Blues are 11-1-1 against the Wild in the last 3 seasons. Now, I know this goes back to kind of before the Wild hit the reset button. Last year was a sort of a transition year as we still had Parise and Suter around, but we were kind of ushering in new talent. The year before that, obviously, we still had like Koivu and Stahl and all those guys were still around.
Yeah.
So, I mean, granted, still a concerning trend because we haven't beaten the Blues yet this season. And then the same goes for Nashville. They've won 10 out of their last 11 against the Wild. And this one really blows my mind because Nashville's had a better season than I think most people were expecting them to this year. There's a decent chance they get over 100 points and end up as a wild card team, which is nuts. But, I mean, they've played pretty well, but I'm amazed at how the Wild continue to struggle against this team when we clearly just have far more talent than they. I mean, don't get me wrong, Nashville's a talented team, but when you just look on paper, for sure, the Wild have more talent. So, and I know Nashville, they like to muck it up, they like to get it dirty. They love baiting teams into penalties and fights and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, where do you want to start here, Liberta? Do you want to start the Blues or the Preds, and maybe just go into what you think some of the issues are facing these teams?
Yeah, sure. We can start with whatever you want. I was actually gonna make a note real quick about the Blues here. I think most of those games, actually, now I think of it off the top of my head, going back to last year, I think a lot of these actually have happened in the last 2 seasons, just because I think last year we only played, I think, 6 or 7 other teams in our whole schedule. So like 8, I think we played like 8 games, maybe 7 or 8 games against the Blues just last year. And then obviously we had a handful this year. I know we still have, I think, 1 or 2 maybe left to play against them. But
yeah,
I mean, a lot of this has come when the Wild have actually been good. I know there might be a couple trailers on 2 years ago too, but still, it's like this is a problem that we got to figure out, because this isn't just like a this year problem. Like this isn't going away. So I think it'd be nice to get over that hump, turn things back in the right direction against a really big rival like the Blues are. I mean, the thing is, they just kill the Wild because I think they're a more talented team. If you're stacking them up against like Nashville, who's right there too, I think St. Louis is a more talented team. I think they got more star power and everything like that. But they also take advantage way more than the Wild do when they get in these special teams opportunities. I think they're third best in the power play, and then they're 6th best in the penalty kill, or maybe I got it flip-flopped. But they're basically top 5 units in both those areas, whereas the Wild, when you stack it up, they're 18th in power play percentage, and then they're 24th in penalty kill, which is just awful. Like that can't happen.
Bad.
Yeah, but we're still tied in the standings, and what that can tell you is that the Wild at 5-5 even strength, like we're a really good team. So, and when you think about that, like 5-5 goals is, really 5-5 goals is really one of the biggest indicators as far as how good your team really is, when you're just looking at the majority of the game obviously is played 5-5. So if you're good at that, then you're probably a good team. So it's just we got to take more advantage when we get chances with an odd man. Like, I know we certainly have struggled with that, but hopefully we could make it a little bit better than it's been. I think it has gotten a little bit better, because I feel like we were hanging out ranked in the 20s at some point, and now we're 18th. So like it's gotten a little bit better, but you'd like to see it obviously a lot better. I don't know if that's probably not a fix you can make this year. Probably something you should explore in the offseason. But I think we got to probably stay away from the penalty kill more so, with being 24th ranked and the Blues are 3rd on the power play. Like that could kill you in a series. So I think and at the same time too, when you think about getting a playoff series, the refs are probably going to call less. So that's just the way playoff hockey goes. Like that probably plays more to our advantage, but still you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I would say, like with the Blues, definitely, like Nashville was definitely the more physical team in the earlier stage of the season. I was there that night that Cap Finn got his number retired, and Nashville smoked us at home, and that was right at the trade deadline. And Guerin basically went out and got size. He went and got Delorier. He went and got Middleton. guys that can contribute and, play aggressively and hit some people, because the Wild just didn't have enough size, especially defensively, um, to hang with a team like Nashville, who's just going to hit you and, try to bait you into fighting and all that sort of stuff. So
Exactly.
the Blues, we just had played them recently, and we had a 3-1 lead in the third period. We blew it and ended up losing in overtime, which was unfortunate. But we did play a good game, and the reason we blew it is because the defense kind of stopped, playing great, and they had Jordy Ben on the ice, which I, for the life of me, just can't understand how this guy is still getting ice time when we got Kalen Addison down in the minors. Like, I get, maybe they don't trust Kalen Addison completely, but I mean, Jordy Ben literally just got skated around by, I think it was Shen or something. Like, he's not even one of their better players, and just skated right around him. Right around him, and flipped it right past Cam Talbot. So it was super frustrating. But I think the Wild have made strides against the Blues. That Nashville game, though, right before the Blues game, was super ugly again, though. So
it was.
I don't really know. I don't know what the issue is with Nashville. I really don't, because don't get me wrong, like Philip Forsberg, fantastic player.
Oh yeah.
Roman Josi, one of the best defensemen, if not the best defenseman in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And then their goalie Saros has had a good season as well. Like, I mean, they got some good pieces there, but they just don't have the top to bottom depth that the Wild does. And that's, like you mentioned, like it's appearing to be a 2-horse race between the Wild and Blues now for that 2 seed. Nashville slipped back a little bit,
which is probably good for us.
Yeah, definitely good for us. And it's like I mentioned earlier, it's insane that Nashville could still get 100 points and potentially be a wild card. Like, I've never seen a season like this. Like, you even look at the East.
It's so lopsided.
Basically all the playoff teams in the East are going to end up over 100 points. And the same thing could happen in the West, depending how these last, handful of games shake out. Exactly. But then you have some just horrible teams as well. Like, there's not a lot of middle ground here. So
yeah, exactly. You're either good or you are not.
Exactly. And it just blows my mind that I've never seen this before, because the Wild had a franchise record. I think it was 102 points in 2016-17. It was either 101 or 102 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And I mean, they're going to obliterate that record this year, and they might not even get second in their division. It's crazy, man.
That is insane. And yeah, speaking of Nashville real quick, slipping back, I think that's like, I haven't seen us play even a moderately close game with them in a while. I mean, at least that off the top of my head. I mean, like you mentioned the game last week when we just got waxed, and I mean, it was just power play goal after power play goal. There's like 3 in a row. It really was 4 in a row, but we literally just killed the penalty, but they still got the goal anyway, like within seconds. So, I mean, that's really discouraging, and that needs to be cleaned up. And we can't also stoop to their level too and take all these penalties. I know you're going to get on your skin, you're going to get pissed, but at the same time, we got to play with level heads, play within ourselves, and just go out and do what we do, because we're going to be the better team at the end of the day. It's just making enough plays to just get by. You don't have to make it like super pretty, but just enough to win games and move on and get to where you want to go.
Right. And eventually this will flip, because you don't see records like this against a certain team last forever. Like,
oh no,
it's not like the Wild or the Arizona Coyotes, where every time they play like Colorado, they just get smoked. The Blues and Wild are very close teams in terms of, how good they are. And Nashville's right there too. So it's like, this has to balance out eventually, where the Wild, win a couple. And maybe that happens in the playoffs where it really matters. Because if you remember last year, the Wild played Vegas extremely well in the regular season. And granted, it was a good playoff series too, but Vegas got up 3-1. We thought we were maybe going to be done in 5 games. Wild ended up pushing it to 7, but Vegas still got the best of us. So I think in the end, the better team ends up, winning anyways. So I think that, get a playoff series against one of these teams, which it's definitely looking like that'll be the case now. That we'll just have to see how it plays out from there.
For sure, yeah. Playoff hockey is a different breed, so we'll see how we're playing when we get closer to the end. But yeah, it's certainly things to keep in mind here with pointing out these records. I mean, winning only 1 game in our last 11 against the Predators, and only 2 in our last 13 against the Blues. Like, obviously that's not a recipe for playoff success, but if you win the playoff games, then nobody cares about what happened during the regular season. So it's just about, fine tuning our game plan to attack these guys and play our style instead of theirs. So I think really that's what it's going to come down to, and hopefully we can build some good steam going to the playoffs to help ourselves out a little bit in that regard too, and hopefully lock up second place in the division, get that home ice. That could be ever so important.
For sure. So quickly here before we wrap up, do you think the Wild, I mean, I'm guessing I know where you stand on this, but do you think the Wild can win a series against either one of these teams?
Oh, they certainly can, and I know we've certainly pounded the table on this, especially throughout this video, talking about how we are a more talented team than both of these squads. But at the same time, it's just what are we gonna play our brand, or are we gonna play theirs when it comes down to it in the playoffs? So I think that's probably the biggest deciding factor here. And if we're doing what we do best, then I think we're gonna be just fine, because I don't think at our best and them at their best, I think we're still better, and that'll hopefully win out at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think, especially if we can get home ice, that's the thing I care about the most is just get that 2 seed, get home ice, no matter if it's St. Louis or Nashville. And, if it goes 7 games, at least your game 7's at home in front of the best fans in the NHL. So
Exactly.
yeah, I'm not going to worry about it yet. It's definitely a concerning trend against both these teams, but unless we get into the playoffs and we're a favorite because we'll have the home ice, and we end up getting smoked or something, then I'll be concerned, because then it's over multiple years and over a playoff series.
Yep.
And if you remember, even that franchise record-setting year where we got 102 points in 2016-17,
Yep.
played the Blues in the first round of the playoffs and lost in 5 games.
Yeah, that was such a sour way to end that year. Like you said, that was the best year in franchise history, and we just came out flat in the playoffs and did nothing. So
Yeah.
I think obviously that's going to haunt some people a little bit. Thankfully, we don't have many of those guys around anymore, but it's still something that as a fan, that's kind of lurking in the back of your mind. Whether it should or shouldn't is another story, but it's there, and you just gotta hope for the best, I guess. I don't know.
Absolutely. So we'll see how it goes, and they have one more game against each team here, so we'll see if they can maybe change the tide on that a little bit before we enter the playoffs here. So
For sure.
That's going to do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Please be sure to like this video and hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram, and let us know your thoughts below in the comment section. Are you concerned about the struggles against the Blues and the Preds? Why do you think those teams give us so much trouble? And do you think the Wild will turn it around before this season ends? So, let us know your thoughts below. And until next time, thanks for watching.